What is happening, mediocre people of YouTube? Look at me. I ain't even trying to look appropriate. These last few days, taking a nice rest, a little vacation here, and not even trying to look appropriate. As Elmo B once put it and said to me when I asked him, I said, "What's New Orleans like now?" Because I've never been, right? I really want to do a Mardi Gras and all that stuff, and we've talked about that. Elmo B, I said, Elmo, what's New Orleans like now? He said, "Man, New Orleans is like Las Vegas on welfare." And I thought that was great because that's, you could say that about the city of Detroit. Except the city of Detroit's missing the Las Vegas part. Detroit has a different culture than New Orleans. So, it's missing the Las Vegas part, but definitely the welfare part is there. So, just finishing up watching the latest Netflix documentary on Hurricane Katrina 20 years later, which is interesting because I just did a video a couple of weeks ago talking about it because I was afraid that people would forget. I had no idea this documentary was coming out on Netflix. It's a Spike Lee deal, which he did When the Levees Broke, or When the Levees Break, or whatever it was called, which was great. Um, and he's a part of this documentary. And there's a lot of truth, man. There's a lot of truth to be said. I think it's so important. They get into, how important education is, and in this country, you're guaranteed a public education. And then, you've got New Orleans, which Detroit's probably even worse, where 40% of the kids come out of school and they can't read. How is that possible? I can never imagine, and I've met people during my lifetime, adults, grown men, who couldn't read. And I'm just like, oh my God, how could you go through life not knowing how to read or write, and then how did that happen, who knows? Maybe they had different issues on top of it, like dyslexia and stuff like that. But that stuff is all treatable. And in the wealthiest country in the world, come on, man. 40% of the kids coming out of New Orleans schools can't read. And I'm sure Detroit is right there, and even worse. Detroit public schools have been terrible for way too long. And then, of course, you have these charter schools coming in, which, if you can afford to send your kid there, they're not doing any favors to the population. Um, and then there's some untruths. They talk about how well, it's the Republican Party that has stacked the game against everybody, and the way the Republican Party looks at you is they look down on you. Well, don't worry. I want to make sure everybody feels included, because those people that are up here in that wealth category, whether they're Democrat, Republican, whatever they tend to call themselves, they all look down on us exactly the same. Okay, so um, don't discount your political affiliation if they're um, ultra wealthy or whatever. Some of them. I've met a lot of people in my life, and I've seen both sides of it. But in general, I think that people who have become wealthy because they work their ass off, those people, in my experience, are usually very generous people, um, and great to work with. Um, it's the people who they don't have their parents' money; they have their great great grandfather's money, right? It's those people that come from they grew up in private schools and everything else, and those are the people that always seem to want to um, get a better deal, get a better price at it. Because, and honestly, I'm just going to say it because I've experienced enough times to say this is the truth. My truth is that those people look at us, the middle class working person, as disposable. Not even below them, just disposable. We're disposable people. And many, 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 many of our politicians in this country look at us the same way, as we're just disposable people. So, certainly the city of New Orleans has, and the state of Louisiana has dealt with a lot of that, as has Detroit and Michigan and many other states, all states. The corruption and there's certainly a culture of people that want to keep other people down. Again, like hey, there's a perfect example of the Democrats. The reason they want people to immigrate here is because they need somebody to wash their toilets. They need to have that underclass of people to clean their toilets. And and on the Republican side, they've said the same type of things. There's a definitely, they want to keep an underclass of people to clean their toilets, wash their windows, do their yard work. And if you don't respect yourself and you don't demand respect of others, then you will be an underclass of a person. And you know you really and that's where education comes in, because it teaches you how to respect yourself. And that's just one of the things it teaches you, to respect yourself, respect others, and demand respect. It's up to you in the end. There's a lot of things that the game is already stacked against you, but it doesn't mean you can't win. It doesn't mean you can't get to where you're trying to go. And I think that New Orleans is one of the most important cities in this country. And that is because years ago I went down the rat hole of traditional New Orleans jazz music. And I just think it's incredible, and the roots of it, and where it comes from, and what it is today. It's just, and it keeps evolving. And I just think that it's incredible. I went down that rat hole years ago. I still go down that rat hole all the time, trying to listen to those horns and whatnot, and apply that to what I'm doing on the guitar or whatever I'm playing. But I'm usually playing guitar. And so, that being said, I think that New Orleans is one of the most important cities in America. We need to make sure it's preserved. Not, I don't need to come there and preserve it, because I don't know that culture, right? That culture, the people who live there need to preserve it. They don't need somebody coming in from Utah or New York or wherever, unless you want to come in and write a nice big check, and then just let the people who live there and know the culture take care of it. You can't come in and write a big check and then say, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's what I'm going to do to preserve the culture that I know nothing about, right? You can't do that. So again, it comes back to, issues like education and healthcare, and all of those things that seem so small and seem so taken for granted, but a lot of people don't have the basics, man. And if you don't have the basics, how do you even start, right? You're going to build a house, you're going to start with the windows first. It doesn't work that way. You got to start with the foundation. So yeah, and so I really think it's really important that in all cities, Detroit has its own culture, and I think it's important to preserve the culture in Detroit. And it's just not happening. It's not happening. There's people desperately fighting, but as I've told you guys many times, especially in the most recent futures, the Detroit is just it's just becoming an empty city. There's nobody there. I mean, there's lots of people living there, but it's like the culture's been stripped out from under it, and or it's being stripped out from under it. And I really hope that's not happening to New Orleans. But yeah, if you haven't caught it yet, don't remember the name of it, but go to your Netflix account and look up Hurricane Katrina. It's Hurricane Katrina 20 years later. It's a 3-part documentary. I just finished it, and I'm sure I will be watching it again. It's really incredible, especially in the third part, both one and two, but the third part really gets into more of the culture and stuff, and the stuff that I've been interested in for a long time. I think that's amazing. Musically, mainly, my interest is in the musical side of it, and of course, New Orleans has a massive musical side to it, right? So, yeah. So there you go. There's my review on the latest Netflix documentary on Hurricane Katrina. For the survivors of Hurricane Katrina, I hope you all are doing well. I hope life's been good to you. Uh, I can't imagine um, living in a city that, pretty much 80% of it was underwater, maybe more. I can't imagine having my home swept out from under me, and then my insurance company telling me that they're not going to pay, and all the other things that happen to so many people. Um, just terrible stuff. So for those survivors, I hope life is treating you well, as it should, and I hope you're treating yourself well. Till next time, I'm still on vacation. Peace out.